Hello. Yes, Ashimwe. Nishimiye kubabona. I am so happy to see everyone, Rwanda and the friends of Rwanda gathered here to honor God and really proudly proclaim what He has done for our nations and for our continent, and for this country of the United States as well. I am really grateful and I give Him full credit for this moment together and what He has done and what He's about to do in the future. So I've been wondering, what other thing can I do except to bear witness to what the Lord has done in our lives, and be a witness to the power of prayer and worship of the people of God. Because when we are gathered in His name, He is in our midst and He does wonders. The previous speaker, Ambassador Murigande, has touched me deeply, and while I will have said that it will be too hard to speak after him, I am actually honored to speak in the sense that I want to testify that what he just mentioned, I've seen it with my own eyes, and I thank God for it. Tonight I will share with you two stories, and you just saw the video, and you may all be wondering, what on earth is that? Growing food without tilling or plowing the soil, is that even possible? Has that happened? Maybe some of you that are a bit familiar with agriculture are asking themselves that question. So yes, it is possible to grow without tillage, and I will explain it just in a bit what it means and where we got that from. But before I do share about agriculture, a few years ago, in fact 7 years ago, I was in Boston graduating from Babson College, where I did my undergraduate studies in business and entrepreneurship and accounting. I was very blessed to have a scholarship through the Bridge to Rwanda Scholars Program that they just mentioned. And I see a whole lot of friends of Bridge to Rwanda, some that have been our host families, and people who have cheered us on. I praise God for them. Linda and Skylar and some others, and Antoinette, who have been supportive of our education journey. May God bless you so much. Yes. And at the time, really, I studied business and entrepreneurship because I truly wanted to learn about business and then go back home and create, more business opportunities that do create jobs for people. Around the time I was about to graduate, 6 months before graduation, I had plans to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I had interned with them before and had a great experience in auditing, which I was very happy about, and for the longest time that's, had invested my life and my professional, my professional internships all in the space of business consulting. However, one night, in a setting a little bit like this, here we had on stage people worshiping God and praying and worshiping and praying. So imagine something similar on a college campus in Boston in the fall, and we're just like worshiping God together, and we feel His presence come, and we are all overwhelmed by it. And many of us, we start tearing up and remembering everything that God had done. And in that beautiful moment, just like we had and we will have, God started to talk to us in powerful ways. So for me personally, I heard as we exited the chapel, one friend asked another, and say, Virginia, you're going to work, I think, for McKinsey or some other company of the likes. Why are you going to that company? Is it because God is calling you to that place, or because it's a prestigious company and it will be a big name on your resume and you will have really good money? The question felt like a personal attack. I asked myself, why are you going back to PwC, and why are you going back to these places? Is it God calling you there, or just like you want a big name on your resume and a good job and a whole lot of money just straight out of college? I pondered on that question, and I said, of course, yeah, I'm going there. I excel in accounting. I have excellent grades. God has truly put this in me. My professors, they know this. Of course, so clearly, this had to have to be God's plan, and it makes sense. But then I heard like a small thought come through my head, asking me, why did you come in the United States in the first place? I said, well, I came here. I remember my essays that I wrote that I want to learn about business and take my knowledge back to Rwanda and create opportunities, for many people, and And then I felt another question coming in my head and say, so are your current plans taking you closer to that or away from that? Now at that time I knew this wasn't for anything coming, that I knew that this is God talking to me. While I didn't hear an audible voice, as Ambassador Charles mentioned, I knew that these thoughts are not coming from me. And by that time I said, well, God, so what do you want? What do you want that I do? And this thought came back again and said, you need to do exactly what you wrote you will do. And it's righteousness, really, like to follow through on what we accepted, we shall do. And so, thank you. Then I asked myself and said, so God, do you mean you really want me to drop everything that was familiar to me and go back and start a business in Rwanda? And I asked him, so what kind of business do you want me to start? Like, do I go in technology, in education, in manufacturing? What? I don't even have a business idea right now. So how can I go and launch into something that I completely don't know? Like, I don't have even a passion right now to pursue something in Rwanda. So how is this going to work out? And one word came back as a response, and it was impact. Something that will impact so many people. And I had written a research paper like that semester on the coffee industry in Rwanda, and I just quickly remembered that, agriculture is the industry that employs most people and has relatively low barriers to entry. In all the other industries, someone will get into if they have a particular degree or some level of training in one thing or another, but in agriculture, pretty much right now everybody can, come in and join agriculture. Whether they do it well or not, but anybody can, launch. And so therefore, majority of the population finds themselves as actors in agriculture. And so I ask God, so do you mean you're telling me I go and become a farmer? And the answer was yes. So Um, Now I am, in Massachusetts, in Boston. At that time, I wasn't in Nebraska. I was not in Iowa. I was in Boston, deciding to become a farmer. So I told God, but this is really kind of strange. But when I gave my life to you, Christ, I was not joking. I really surrendered it to you. So if this is what you want me to do, I will do it. The moment I said that word and said I will do it, it is very hard to explain. I wish I can still replay it, but unexplainable passion for agriculture instantly came into my heart. I don't know. I really don't know. It was like a baptism by fire, but this time around in agriculture. So now, mind you, my friends were asking one another a question. Now I come back to the conversation when my friend is still answering. And then I say, hey, everyone, wait. Can you believe just when we are talking, God told me that I need to go back to Rwanda and become a farmer. And they look at me weird. They're like, wait, what happened? How did that happen? Explain to us step by step. And I really did not have words, but I explained everything and they said, I'm convinced this is what I need to do. And they could see the passion and they were confused because I was preparing for the CPA exam. And now, all of a sudden, within minutes, something changed. I knew God wanted me somewhere. By the time we reached the dormitories, I had, gone through all kinds of things. And I have to say a little bit of my background. I grew up in Kigali to parents. My father is a construction technician, and my mom is a teacher. For those who are familiar with Rwanda, I grew up in Gisozi, close to the Genocide Memorial. And for school, I went to school in Kigali, and then right after came to Boston. So I've never practically lived anywhere that I can see farms. So the closest I was to farming was to shop at Whole Foods in the produce section, and when God gave me that dream, I was like, yeah, and we grow things in that really nice, section at Whole Foods, so fresh, so crisp, like the meal just we had. So that's, organic farming, that's the closest I was thinking, about what probably God was telling me. But it was going to be a little bit different. By the time I reached the dorm, so many things are coming, so many images and ideas. And reality kicked in. And I said to God, okay, actually, if I'm to grow crops, then that means I need to have land. I have no land and my family doesn't have any land. And if I am to be a farmer, probably I need money, and if I don't have land, at least I can have money to buy it and start up capital to run operations. And that's gonna be a challenge because I don't have any money right now. And the third thing that was missing is I have zero experience and zero training in farming, and therefore it will be impossible, to farm. I was convinced I could get funding. Boston is a good area for startup. You can pitch ideas and you can easily get funded for ideas. In fact, at Babson, there were such kinds of opportunities. But no investor has ever invested into someone who has absolutely no idea what they are doing. And so I knew on that front, that will also be a no-go. So I said to God, no capital, no land, and no experience. I'm sorry I was too fast earlier to tell you I'm going. but this looks very impossible. There is no way I will do this. So, I may be a CPA and work for a couple of years here in America and maybe think about it. I put him to a challenge and then slept. That was Thursday night after a worship moment like this. And then 3 days later, out of nowhere, Dale Dawson, the CEO of Rwanda, calls me. He was checking on all scholars that were about to graduate, checking on where we will be. And he asked me, Rosine, it's a few months to graduation, what are your plans? I said, well, Dale, I was sure of my plans 3 days ago, but now I'm confused. And he asked me, what happened in the last 3 days? I said, well, I felt God telling me that I need to go back in Rwanda and work in agriculture. But do not ask any further questions. That's all I can share, and I don't know. And he told me, well, let me tell you why I'm calling. He said that a couple from Cambridge had just donated 6 hectares of agriculture land to Rwanda, land on a lake. And if you know Rwanda, it's a scholarship program helping young people, maybe some of them are here, to access university scholarships abroad, mainly here in the United States. I wonder why somebody will make a donation of agriculture land in some remote part in Kayonza. And he tells me the second thing, there is a person, an investor, who has a feed meal factory and is struggling to get enough soybeans for feed production. And he's looking to invest and help Rwanda if they can help him find a solution to growing more soybeans in the country. And he would happily fund about 2 years of operation for that business. Lastly, Dale tells me that he met a group of people that God has taught how to farm in Zimbabwe. A faithful group of people called Foundations for Farming, who have a system of conservation agriculture built on biblical principles, who want to train and mentor young people from Rwanda and hopefully launch them back in the country so that they can make this known. So he said, out of these 3 things that just came to us in such a short time, we feel God is calling Rwanda, although a scholarship institution, to change and maybe do something also in agriculture. We feel that's where the Spirit is leading. And right now we are struggling because we don't have anybody to come and run the program. And the more I thought about this, your name kept coming to my head. So that's why I'm calling you to check if this is something you will truly be interested in. Like many of you, my first response was, let me check my social media, Facebook, Twitter, and see if by no mistake I posted this foolishness somewhere. I had not. And therefore I knew God came through for the challenge I put to him. At the beginning of this, Antoinette said he's a God who answers prayers. When we put him to a challenge, or we tell him things, even when we murmur on our beds, and we think nobody has heard, he is listening. I knew then that God had called me and he had responded. I knew such an opportunity comes once in a lifetime of getting an investment without experience. So I would have jumped on the opportunity, but God needed to work on me for a few other things. I was not humble. Now when reality kicked in, when I thought, okay, so ngiye Kayonza gufata isuka nkahinga, oh, I'm going to the village to farm. I said, really? Like, so now what will I tell my parents? So what will I tell Bamson? That after all these things, after going abroad, after being here for some time in Washington, D.C. and places, I go back home, not even something I studied. It was confusing people. It was even confusing me. I'm wondering how I would explain how all this came about. But God was with me, and He needed me to be humble and know that even that job that people think is terrible, farmers are at the core of God's heart, and He cares about them as much as He cares for the bankers and people at Goldman Sachs and Wall Street and places. And without them, we will not be enjoying the beautiful, delicious meal that we are having on our tables right now. And it's a calling, really, to feed God's people. And so, with that transformation, it took me 4 months to repent of my pride. I wish it was faster. But God, see, our righteousness is filthy rags. So, it's hard. It's really hard. But I thank God for the grace. So, fast forward, I returned to Rwanda and started working on this program and go get trained at Foundations for Farming in Zimbabwe. And this leads me to my second story that I want to share. Ambassador Muriganda mentioned that there are definitions of righteousness, and one of them is practicing things God's way or God's nature. And that's exactly what I learned at Foundations for Farming. A group of people in Zimbabwe like you, passionate about the Lord and wanting to see His solutions implemented on our continent, went down on their knees to pray for Africa, saying, Lord, we have land. We are a continent too rich to be poor. We have about 30% of the world's natural resources, and yet we are receivers of food aid. What's wrong? What's happening, Lord? Like, we are not being faithful stewards of resources that you have given to us. Tell us what's going wrong and what can we do about this? And they prayed to God to show them a way and to teach them how to farm, how to nourish themselves. And God came through teaching one person called Brian Aldridge how to farm. So how did he do it? He inspired him to go into a natural forest where he would usually go for prayer time. He goes, and as he sits down, he sees that the land is really good. It smells fresh. Like no soil is flipped or tilled, plowed. And he sees that all the ground is covered by a blanket of dead leaves, mulch. It's all covered in mulch. And he hears the Lord talking to him and saying, this is my farm. I farm here. This is how I grow the trees. For some of us in Rwanda, you might be a little familiar with Nyungwe Forest. That's God's farm. He's the one taking care of it. He fertilizes it. He takes care. He nourishes all the trees and the grass and everything. Now journey with me through Nyungwe. Look at how that forest is really thriving with all the plants. No tractor is in Nyungwe. No fertilizer is dropped there, but things flourish, even in the drought. Not to add that nobody has done an umuganda to do terracing in Nyungwe. It's very steep. But in this forest, the water is so clear and clean. And then we wonder, if you move a few kilometers from the forest, the rivers become brown. And so, God is telling Brian as he's sitting and watching this natural forest and saying, look at the way I do things. And because you do not trust me, as written in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 to 6, and say, trust the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he shall direct your paths. So he says, because of you leaning on your own understanding, your farms can't produce, your farms can't give you much, your farms are eroded, the soil health is bad, and therefore you are beggars to nations, and yet I called you to be blessings to nations. And he said, he vowed and said, I am going to go and farm like God, apply God's nature into something specific as agriculture. So learning from what God is doing in nature, he went and said, okay, I will not plow the land, and I'm going to cover land with mulch and do it wholeheartedly, like someone stewarding things for God and not for me. So he starts working on that, and like things moved, and they had the produce, they had the harvest, and things multiplied. For those familiar with tonnage, I'm not quite fluent in bushels and different things, but where they will get 300 kilos of maize per hectare, they started getting 14 tons, so 14,000 kilograms per hectare of land doing this. God did it. And God asked him, I want you to teach how to farm like me, farming God's way, farming like God, learning from God, and applying what we see from what he has created, and embody it in our lives, doing it for him. And he started teaching, and that's the mission of Foundations for Farming. Of course, coupled with biblical principles, because you can have an amazing technology, but if Christ is not enabling you to do that and you are not disciplined, it does not happen. So that's how I got trained. And when I came back to Rwanda after this training, I started doing it, and people thought we are going crazy. Everyone thought we are going crazy. But, you know, God has dropped people in places to encourage everyone he has called. I am grateful for Ambassador Charles, because right at the beginning when I had this fire, he's one of the first people I met. At the time he was at the University of Rwanda's leadership. And he's the one person who trusted us first when other people thought we were going crazy. And he afforded us and his team at the time to have a collaboration with the University of Rwanda and have a small demonstration farm of this foolishness in the middle of the campus of the university. Thank you for the trust, really. Yeah, just like this investor invested in people who know nothing, what they're doing. Ambassador knew I studied accounting, and can you imagine giving someone an opportunity to have a farm in the middle of the College of Agriculture at the University of Rwanda, and to teach others to do this thing? It takes an unusual leader. It takes a person filled with God's Spirit. So I I am thankful for that. So we tried this, and God, I mean, we will do maize here and maize here, or a crop of soybeans here, the normal way people do it, the conventional way, and this way. You will think they are from two different countries. And yet it's the same soil type, but we saw God do miracles with this. And 4 years later, we started a program to train young college graduates from the University of Rwanda into this system and really help them see what is possible in agriculture. And in the last 4 years, we have practically reached more than 200 or 250 young people who have gone through this program, and many of them who are already employed. That was a miracle. We started with one university, and now we have more than 4 universities that we work with in Rwanda, creating pathways in agriculture for graduates. And not only that, but God has also, I think 4 years later, our president, Paul Kagame, he heard of what was happening and asked us to do a national trial to see if this will be possible into the government agriculture extension system. So the video you watched was our first trial. We started with 120 locations, sectors in the country, in all 30 districts, to have a trial side-by-side, plots in foundations for farming and plots in conventional systems, to see what would happen. And I mean, you could hear from the experience of the farmers what they saw, transformation. Yields are 2 to 3 times higher, erosion cut by almost 90%, 40% costs are down, and increased soil health. And that really did motivate us to, expand this program. Now it has reached all sectors in the country. In fact, we are working with the government agronomists to really reach the last farmer in Rwanda and help them transform in conservation agriculture. It should not surprise us that when we practice righteousness, when we do God's way, when we do things God's way, including something as fundamental as farming, miracles will happen. This year we reached 100,000 farmers who have been reached by this message, and our hope is to, by the next year, 2026 and more, that hopefully every farmer in Rwanda be exposed to this God's way of farming and see the impact it will bring and change Rwanda into a food secure nation where people come and see what is possible. So we have seen, you heard someone saying Fumfuza, it's a small plot, like 16 meters by 39, so about 624 square meters. It's like two plots to build the house. Can you believe that a small plot like that can grow enough maize and beans to feed a family of 6 people for 1 year? Using God's way, God's ways. Africa right now is paralyzed by food insecurity and causing all kinds of issues. And the question on everyone's mind is, how will we able to feed this growing population? How will we able to stay ahead and create opportunities for young people to have jobs and be content and enjoy the full potential that God has given to them? And in the face of climate change, that has changed rainfall patterns, and in places where we don't even have, sometimes our budget needs don't quite well meet, have some of the irrigation technologies and everything that we will want to have. And then we ask ourselves, what is the future? Well, the answer is to return to God's word, to return to prayer and ask God, what is the best way to feed your people? What do you advise us to do? And when we do it His way, the smallest land using a normal hoe can be able to do wonders if it's put in God's hand. So as I conclude, Bridge to Rwanda, we have vowed to continue learning from the Lord and sharing what God has been teaching, to plant and grow things God's way and share it with anyone who will listen. And we know God will do wonders. We know there is a future for us as a food secure continent, and God will do it when we ask and pray and implement what He tells us. Thank you very much.